Hey, it's 10:02. No one is here, but I've decided to hold the meeting anyway. So let me pull up my notes to help me stay on track here. Bear with me while I pull that up, please. A lot of this is going to be repeats, so I'm going to try to just keep things simple and not repeat myself. So, really quickly, I remind you, you can get extra credit for watching these videos. One way you can get extra credit is by emailing me to tell me that you watched the meeting, watched the video, and in the email, you're going to send a series of attendance words or attendance phrases that I'm going to give you throughout the video that provides evidence that you watched and paid attention to the entire video. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to ask the last thing in the email you need to include is a question about the material I presented. And it needs to be about the material I presented because once again, it provides evidence that you paid attention and watched the whole thing. Even if you think you understand everything, you don't really have a question, just come up with one anyway, just to clarify something that I said, perhaps. Also, in your email, please include which course you're taking and which meeting, right? So, for example, we're meeting, this is the 101 Module 8 week 1 meeting, right? But you could still go back and watch the other meetings. So, again, if you were to email me about one of those, you would tell me, which, excuse me, you would tell me, which course you're taking, which is 101-01, and which meeting you're referencing. So anyway, that's one way to get extra credit. The other way you can get extra credit is to summarize what I write or what I say in this video for the sake of your classmates. Again, it's a summary, so it wouldn't really be helpful if you had a complete transcript of every single thing I said. Also, it wouldn't be very helpful if you just copied this and pasted it because I'm giving you access to these notes. So please summarize it in your own. And those are the two ways you can get extra credit. And summarize will be the first word for attendance. Let's move forward really quickly. Let you know it's Tuesday at 10:04 a.m. I'm still grading everything from last week. I will post an announcement and let you know when I am done. Until then, if possible, please refrain from any questions about your grading because I might not be done yet with your particular assignments. One of the new things that, again, I don't have much to say this week, so I guess I just want to reiterate this. I've said this before. I just want to really reiterate it and make sure you understand. I make mistakes, right? So please feel free to call me out when you think I've made a mistake. I don't want your grade to suffer just because I made a mistake. And really specific, not specifically, but I've been having, make mistakes on in all kinds of ways. But also, I've been having a lot of issues with Google Forms. So not only am I making small mistakes sometimes with the Google Forms, but also I'm just having issues with them. So I just want to apologize for any issues with Google Forms. A lot of it's not my fault. Like I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong with these forms, but bear with me. I'm dealing with it. But just really quickly, just to show you an example of what I mean. So when you post something or when you do one of these Google Forms, and I'm looking to look at your grades up here at the top right, I'll type in your name, right? So let's see. I don't know. I'm just going to pull an example up here. Pulling up. I don't want to pull up a current student. So excuse me. Okay, there we go. Well, so you can see here, this is how I do it, right? I type your name in, which is why I'm so picky about making sure you include your full name and your course number. And what happens is it pulls up your name, and you can see I already have one of your classmates, their particular form is already up. But you see what I did in my rush is I did this incorrectly. So not that you need to know, but just in case you're curious, the way I'm supposed to do is go under here, because right now I am under this individual who I've already graded her form. And I'm in such a rush that sometimes I go back and I search for somebody and I say, oh man, they're not there because I did it wrong. And what I need to do is go here to question. Then it lists all the names of the people who have done it, right? So that's how that works. So again, if I make a mistake, let me know. But also, again, to reiterate, this is why I need you, when you fill out these forms, to put your full name and your course number, which is Bio 101, and your section number, which is Bio 101-01, right? See, you can see here that when I do that, this brings up everybody in your section. And that's why I do that. This is how I grade, and that's why it's important. So yes, please be careful with that. Form will be the next word for attendance. Form, since we just got done talking about the forms. Some new information, just to let you know. Friday will be officially the last day for you to turn in late work or corrections or extra credit. Right, I'm cutting it off on Friday. Um, this is all unofficial anyway. According to the syllabus, none of those, according to the syllabus, there is no extra credit. According to the syllabus, there is no late work or corrections, or they're not accepted, right? So unofficially, I've been suggesting that you get these things done so you can improve your grade. But now I'm telling you that as of Friday, I won't be able to take it. Which brings up a good point. It might already be too late. So the reason I'm not allowing anything after Friday is because I already have a lot of people who now all of a sudden have started caring about the grade because it's the end of the semester. So people are turning in a lot of late work and a lot of corrections. So I just know for a fact that if you turn it in after Friday, there's definitely no way I'll have time to grade it. And again, as this part right here indicates, there's already a possibility that I might not be able to grade it. So just wanted to let you know that. Speaking of corrections and all that, and extra credit, one thing that I still will do, still get 5% for feedback. I will still meet you online and go over any assignment with you. And if you let me give you detailed feedback on that assignment, you can get a 5% boost to that grade. And again, to remind you, that also includes the final exam, the exams, which are important because the final exam is based on, half of it is based on the first 3 exams. So it would be helpful for you to meet me online and get all the correct answers to those first 3 exams. Not only would you get the correct answers, but you would also get a 5% boost to that grade. Yeah, so that's it for general stuff. Discussion 7. If you're watching this video because you're like, well, how am I messing up these discussions? I'm not going to waste other people's time repeating myself. Just watch the older videos, and it's the same stuff every week. You need to use sources. You need to use them properly. This is for your initial post and your replies. Read that link if you need more information. And also for your replies, you need to add to the discussion, right? So your replies, at least for the grading purposes, shouldn't be summarizing what someone already wrote. You shouldn't just repeat what they said. Hey, I like that you wrote, and you shouldn't provide an opinion about what they wrote or a feedback. Again, you can if you want for the sake of discussion, but for the sake of grading, you need to add to the discussion. Again, that's my feedback from the last discussion. That's also my advice for this upcoming discussion for Module 8. And I'll also remind you, I'll write this down later, but the due date for your initial post is always due the first Sunday of the module, right? So your initial post is due this Sunday, and your 2 replies will be due next week. Yeah, so that's discussions. Again, if you haven't watched the older videos, watch those. I go into more detail about them there. Lab, same stuff. Not much to say. Again, watch the old videos. There's a due date. They're due. The last lab 7 was due this Sunday. Some people have missed the due date, and you're going to get a point deduction, and possibly I might not have time to grade it. So if you missed lab 7, now's the time to do it. I already mentioned this. When you do Google Forms, make sure you use your full name, your course and section number. So your name and then Bio 101-01. Make sure you save the labs as PDFs. Real quickly, this might be the last thing. I'll quickly look at the lab 8. See if I can give you any advice, tell you about some common mistakes that are usually made. There we go, lab 8. Let's take a look at the worksheet. Ecological footprint. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. First of all, you're going to read an introduction. Make sure you don't forget that. There's some extra credit in that link, so read that, read the introduction. I just want to point out, then you're going to watch a video, as you often do. And while you're watching that video, you're going to be answering these questions. Like I said, I've been having some issues with Google Forms. So now instead of you filling out a form, you're just going to answer these questions here. But it's the same kind of situation, right? Just answer some questions about the video as you watch it. Now let's talk about the procedure. I'll give you some advice on some common mistakes we make. First of all, as you're going to learn through the video and through the introduction, the United States has a larger ecological footprint. You'll learn more about what an ecological footprint is later, and I'll help you if you want. But for now, I'll just leave it at that. The United States has a larger ecological footprint than the world average, right? So if you're in the U.S. average is larger than the world average. That being said, your first two answers here need to reflect that. So if you think the first question is asking, do you think your footprint is smaller, larger, or the same as the world average, right? So if you think it's smaller than the world average, then obviously it's going to be smaller than the U.S. average, right? If you think it's the same as the world average, obviously it's going to be smaller than the U.S. average. And then likewise, right? So for the US average, if you think your footprint is larger than the US average, obviously it's going to be larger than the world average. Even if you think it's the same as the US average, obviously it's going to be larger than the world average. So make sure those two questions match each other. And then the same can be said here. So the answer to your first two questions here about hypotheses should dictate your answers here. Like, so for example, this question says, if every human on Earth lived like you, how many Earths do you hypothesize we would need to provide enough resources to sustain us? The world average was 1.71. That's the most recent data we have. And the US average was 4.94. So your answer to the first two questions should dictate your answer to this. For example, if you think your footprint is between the world average and the US average, it should be larger than 1.71 and smaller than 4.94. If you think it's larger than the US average, it should be larger than 4.94. If you think it's smaller than the world average, it should be smaller than 1.71, right? So your answers for the first two questions should dictate your answers to these. And it looks like I need to fix some numbering here. So sorry about that, but hopefully I'll have that fixed before you do it. Anyway, so yeah, make sure you're aware of that. Another common mistake I see are these questions right here. Think about the way you live. Which one of the following do you think accounts for the most of your footprint? Food, shelter, mobility, goods, or services? So you only need to choose one. That's a common mistake. Sometimes people ask more, sometimes people provide more than one. So just choose one. And then just a brief explanation of why you think that's the case. Same here. Which one do you think is the least of your ecological footprint? Choose one and explain why. Yeah. And then here's another common mistake. What you're going to do is you're going to go to this website. Oh, wrong one. Excuse me. Bear with me. I apologize. There we go. Okay. What you're going to do is yeah, that is right. I'm sorry. You're going to go to this website. Right, as you can see here, you're going to answer a bunch of questions, right? So the calculator is going to ask you a bunch of questions. At the end of it, it's going to give you your results. Actually, let me take a step back. Got a little bit ahead of myself. As you're answering these questions, they also give you the option to add more details. So if you add more details and prove it, like you can see in the screenshot, then you'll get extra credit. But that's just extra credit. Let's talk about the most important thing. When you're done with the calculator, it's going to give you your results, and it's going to look like this. I even gave you an example. That's not it. Excuse me. Here we go. It's going to look like this, right? So I need something that looks like this, that tells me when your Earth overshoot day is and how many Earths you would need if everybody lived like you, right? So you're going to need that screenshot. Then you're going to answer questions about that screenshot. That's what these questions are right here. Then you click next, and it gives you more results. And it looks like this right here. So then I need a screenshot that looks like this, that tells me, like I said earlier, which one of these was the most of your ecological footprint. In this example, it looks like it was mobility, right? Which one was the least of your ecological footprint? Looks like in this example, it was services, right? And then it also asks you what your ecological footprint is in GHA. So I'm going to need that information, right? So that's the second screenshot that I need from you. And then, of course, from that screenshot, you are going to answer those questions, right? So those questions will be based on the screenshot. Then the next thing, common mistake, keep in mind, these are multi-part questions. So make sure you answer all the parts. What else? This is pretty straightforward. You're going to fill out a table. So like I said, you're going to take screenshots. The screenshots will include results. That information, the data from those screenshots, your results, that will go here. You're also going to look up information about Switzerland. There's a link that you can use right there. It is. That'll give you the information you need. And then you're also going to include the class average. It's pretty simple. There's a link right there. You just click it. This will load up. And what you'll do is put your name, put your information, and then scroll down. And this is the information that you're going to use to put into this table, right? So the GHA per person and the number of Earths per person. So GHA would be, right now anyway, it would be different after you put your data in, but it would be 8.05 and the number of Earths would be 4.97. That's the information you're going to put in here. You can get extra credit if you make a bar graph that compares the different footprints, right? GHA or the number of Earths, whatever you want. That's extra credit. Here we go. This is a little bit redundant, but it's another table. Some of this data is the same. You're going to put your ecological footprint, right? This is how, I don't want to get into this and waste your time for this weekly meeting, but if you need help, let me know. I can help you, but suffice it to say, you're going to take this number, you're going to subtract this number, and this is going to be the answer, right? And then that's for you. And then you're going to do the same for the class average. Here's the most common mistake I see. If this number is smaller than this number, then you're going to have a negative number here, right? So smaller, larger, larger, negative, right? That's how it's going to look. Here we have a larger number followed by a smaller number, which means there's a positive number right here. So be aware of that mistake. Then you're going to make a graph. Make a bar graph showing the differences between the biocapacity and ecological footprint of Brazil, Africa, the world, and the USA, and the class, you and the USA and the class average. That means there'll be 6 bars, right? So there'll be a bar for this number, a bar for this number, 1 bar for this number, 1 bar for this number, 1 bar for this number, and 1 bar for this number. It's a common mistake I see being made. Right? People are adding extra bars, or they're doing it incorrectly, or some people even doing line graphs, which is completely inappropriate for this type of data. So make sure you use the correct numbers. Again, the bars are on the x-axis, meaning they should be going up and down, not side to side. Don't forget to label your axes and title your graph, the usual stuff. And again, if you need help, let me know. I'm just going through this quickly because I don't want to waste anybody's time. Here's an extra credit table you could do. Here I've given you an example, Brazil's GHA, the ecological footprint in 2020, and then 2021, and then 2022. So you can just look up any place and then see how their ecological footprint is changing over time. So feel free to do that for extra credit. Obviously, if you want to, you can highlight this row, this entire row right here. You can right click it and you could add, add rows below if you want. So if you want to do more than one location to get even more extra credit, you can do that. Likewise, excuse me, let me undo that. Likewise, if you wanted to, let's say, right, again, you do 1, 2, 3 years, right? So if you want to do more than 3 years, if it'll let me, excuse me. Man, this is being a real pain. I apologize. Anyway, if it was working, you could highlight this like I did previously, right click it, and then you could add some more. Here we go. No, it's still not working. Anyway, you could add more rows that way so you could do more than 3 years. Anyway, that's extra credit. You could also make a graph for extra credit if you want. In this case, it would be appropriate for you to have a line graph because this is continuous data, right? This is showing how the data is changing. Anyway, moving forward, hopefully it doesn't freeze up on me. Again, just to give you some advice for questions or mistakes I often see. This question number 30 is saying, all right, think about all the questions that you just answered for that ecological footprint. Then it asks you, of all those things, what do you think should be either made illegal or regulated? So make sure people lose points for this because they'll focus on this make illegal thing, right? So they might say, I don't think anything should be made illegal on that, which is okay. And I also hate to share opinions, but I agree with that opinion. I don't think any of that stuff should be illegal. But the question clearly says made illegal and or regulated. So if you just address the make illegal part, say nothing should be illegal, you're going to lose points. Now, granted, you can say you don't think anything should also be regulated. Like, for example, one of the questions asks you about the miles per gallon of the vehicle you drive. that is currently regulated, right? There are regulations on the auto industry. So that is one of those things that is currently regulated. But if for some reason you think nothing should be illegal and nothing should be regulated, that's fine. But you'll just need to explain why, which is it's okay to have a different opinion. Again, my point here is don't just focus on the illegal part. Otherwise, you will lose points. And then this is the opposite question. This one's saying, of all the things on the calculator, which ones basically do you think should be completely, non-regulated and not made illegal? And one of the examples I'll give is the food. One of the questions asks, like, how much meat you eat. And in my opinion, I don't think that should be regulated, right? I think people should be able to eat as much meat as they want. That's just my opinion. Again, I try not to share opinions, but there you go. And then finally, a common mistake for this last question. Many people argue that even though some of these things should remain legal or unregulated, there could be some incentives. Now, your textbook doesn't get into this too much, but there's a difference between regulating something and giving an incentive, right? So the government, for example, is giving tax breaks for solar panels, right? That is an incentive, but they're not making it legal, or they're not, regulating it and say, well, you have to have solar panels in your house, right? They're not doing that. So there's a difference between getting the law involved and having some incentives. So think of all the things, think of an incentive that we could do, whether it be government or otherwise, that would urge people to reduce their ecological footprint. Now, mind you, this is two different things. And I'll give you this example, and then I'm almost done. For example, a grocery store could give a discount if people don't use the store's plastic bags, right? So the thing we're trying to do is reduce the number of plastic bags that are being used, right? And the incentive to get people to do it is to give a discount, right? So you need to have the idea and the incentive. Like an example of an incorrect answer would be, I don't know, power companies should give incentives to use less electricity. All right, so there's the idea of what you think should happen: use electricity. But what is the incentive to do it? So that's, again, kind of a two-part question that people often miss. And that's it. That's all I have to say for the lab. I hope I didn't use up too much of your time. As always, I'll remind you of these things. I'll write it down too before I share it. You don't have to go at this alone. If there's a lab or any assignment and you need help doing it, I'll meet you online. I will help you do the assignment. Or if you want help, if you want me to look over your assignment, not grade it, just briefly look it over and make sure there's no huge mistakes before you submit it, I'll happily meet you online to do that. It would be a very quick meeting. And then finally, as always, after you've done an assignment and after I've graded it, you can meet me online so I can give you feedback on that assignment and a 5% boost to your grade. And to bring it back to what I said earlier, I do make mistakes. So sometimes when we meet and we have these meetings and I provide the feedback, sometimes I catch one of my mistakes and then you get some points back. Or sometimes, like, you may have lost a point because the way I thought you were trying to say something seemed incorrect. But then if we meet and you verbally explain what you were trying to say, then you might get a point back for that. So yeah, it helps you to do that. And I think that's all I have. I'm here to help. I hope you have a good week. The last word for attendance is going to be a name, and the name is Bob. So Bob is the last word for attendance. So again, really quickly, you're going to send me an email. Tell me you're in 101-01, that you're writing about the Module 8 meeting. Give me that list of words and ask one question about the material I presented. And that's all I have. Let me back out here. And I hope you all have a great week.